No college football program is going to be more negatively impacted by the 2016 NFL Draft than the Ohio State Buckeyes. This is a program that could have anywhere between 4 to 6 guys be taken in the first round, and no team, I would imagine, is going to have more prospects drafted than the Ohio State Buckeyes. And one of those biggest of big name prospects for that Ohio State Buckeyes program, one of those guys that looks like a pretty safe bet to be a first round pick in the 2016 NFL Draft and may go a little bit higher than you anticipate is Taylor Decker, the big 6'7", 315-pound senior offensive tackle. You look at this guy, he's a guy that's been a part of a winning program. He's got name recognition, so a lot of people are very familiar with this game, which sometimes means that he could get guys like him can get very hyped up by the media. On the flip side, that means that they've gotten more exposure, so people have had more time to nitpick at their game and poke holes in their game, and as a result, their flaws are stronger or at least more apparent because they've been more visible as prospects. And I think Decker kind of fits into that category. Now, in terms of his strengths, you look at his size and you look at his length. 6'7", 315 pounds, might even be 6'8", and he might be 320 pounds. This is a big mamba jamba. I mean, this is a big motherfucker, period. I'll put it that way, point blank. He is a big, long dude, and he's got great strength. This is a guy that can maul you. This is a guy that can hold up against anybody from a physicality and strength standpoint. He's really good to me as a run blocker, a great run blocker as a left tackle, a guy that can sit there and get up into the defensive end and push him back. Unlike guys like Tunsil and Stanley, a guy like Taylor Decker, when you watch him play the offensive tackle position, he is a guy that you will see that can occasionally pancake somebody, knock somebody down, take somebody to the ground, knock them back on their ass. And, kind of the old school football fans in us, we like those type of guys. We like those big, bruising, physical maulers, and Taylor Decker kind of fits that old school mold of being that physical mauling offensive tackle. Really good, like I said, as a power blocker, as a downhill drive blocker, a seal blocker as well. A guy that really anchors well too, especially in the running game. He's just not a guy that you're going to get up into his body and you're going to push back. You're going to be able to push him around, move him around, put him where you want to put him. He's going to hold his ground, and he, if anything, is going to push you back, and he's going to put you back on his heels. Just really, really hard to push him and get him off of balance. I really, really like his motor as well. Here's a guy that has a bit of a mean streak to him. He plays with effort on a consistent basis. I feel like he consistently puts effort through to finish blocks. He's going to look for somebody to block, even if there's somebody not there for him to block. He just has that attitude that seems to be infectious, that really jumps out to me on film. A guy that's been relatively durable, too. I talk about it so often with prospects. I talk about it with quarterbacks, but it's important in other positions, too. The most important thing you could be, especially a high pick, like a first-round pick, the best skill you can have is the ability of availability. And Taylor Decker, to me, has been a guy that the Buckeyes have been able to count on the past few years to play. And I envision he could be that same type of guy at the NFL level, even if he had to play through some cuts, some bruises, some hurt, some injuries. I think he's a guy that'd be willing to do that. And I really like his work ethic, too. And, from us looking at the outside, sometimes we can't really speak to work ethic sometimes because we don't get the chance to see these prospects day in and day out in terms of their preparation, their practice work, their film study. We don't get to sit there and interview a lot of these guys. We don't get to talk to their coaches. We don't get to talk to other people. So sometimes it can be hard to judge. But one way you can judge work ethic is you can base it off of their improvement level during their time in college. You can see those guys that coast by on natural ability but never really get a whole lot better. The weaknesses they had as a freshman are still the same weaknesses they have as a junior or senior, and they're just as bad, if not worse, at them. You could tell those guys shine right through. And there'll be plenty of those guys in this 2016 draft. But then you have those other guys that you could see clear, tangible progression every single year that they played. You could see where they had something that needed to be addressed, and they got better at it, and they improved at it. And I see that in Taylor Decker's game, especially in terms of his athleticism and his lateral agility in 2015. Heading into the 2015 season, I had no question in my mind that he was either an NFL right tackle or maybe even an NFL guard. I did not think he could play left tackle at the NFL level. Now, after that offseason, the 2015 college football season, I seriously question how he couldn't play potentially left tackle at the NFL level. that work ethic shows through to me. And he's worked that hard to get to this point, and there's still a lot of room to grow. So I anticipate him being the type of guy that is going to work hard, that is going to continue to progress and improve. And I think his upside is a little bit higher than people want to give him credit for. Now, he does have some question marks still, with as much as he's worked on his game and as he proved over the past couple of years. I think he gets a little too upright in pass protection, in particular his pad level. Again, you're talking about guys 6'7", 6'8". It can be a little challenging to keep a consistent knee bend, to keep your pads low. But again, he could be a guy that struggles a little bit. If a guy can get up into his body as a perimeter pass rusher, they can maybe, just maybe, move him and shift him just a little bit. But again, like I said, even that, this is a guy that really anchors well and has a lot of natural strength. He's not a guy you're going to move a ton. But that pad level could be exploited some at the NFL level. It really could. I think he's still a guy that at times can struggle with speed rushers a little bit. I think sometimes when people talk about his struggles against speed rushers in 2015, they're going back to more so of him being a left tackle or right tackle in 2014 and 2013. And I don't think it quite matches the film reality of 2015. I think he was much better against speed rushers. But yes, in theory, there are questions still about whether or not he could handle the real elite speed rushers at the NFL level. But frankly, what offensive tackle couldn't potentially struggle with them? Sometimes we can make a little too much out of them. He's not a slouch. He's gotten better in terms of his lateral agility, his footwork, his initial quickness, and that's a nice thing to see. But there could be those times where speed rushers could potentially overwhelm him. Another thing I'm questioned about his game is once he gets to the second level, he's not an incredible athlete, so already getting to the second level at times is more about muscle and motor and hustle than it is in terms of, straight quickness or burst or athleticism. Once he gets to the second level, he could take some poor angles. Once he gets to the second level, he seems to miss quite a few blocks that he should have hit, and if he would have hit, it would have sprung somebody like an Ezekiel Elliott or a J.T. Barrett or a Cardell Jones for an extra 5 or 10 yards on a run. But a lot of times, he'll get himself out of position again because of that lack of second-level athleticism, in my opinion, and he'll be left reaching or grabbing a little bit, or he'll just end up missing guys that he should have gotten. Now, another guy similar to Ronnie Stanley, I don't particularly like his hand height and pass protection. It's not as low, not as bad as consistently as Stanley, but it is something I think is going to be better, need to get better, especially, again, factoring in the struggles that he's going to have as a 6'8" offensive tackle, potentially at the NFL level, being able to keep his pads low enough to where guys don't get him upright and are able to push him back. I also have some concerns, too, about how he translates to the NFL level because he did play in that spread system. And here's a guy that, when you look at that spread system, you wonder, does he have the necessary understanding of NFL blocking schemes? Because he ran one type of system in college that, frankly, for all intents and purposes, he's not going to run on a consistent basis at the NFL level. There will be times where he could run in an offense that has some spread elements to it, but he's not going to be a guy that plays out of the spread 100% of the time, and that's different. I don't care what anybody says. That's what makes it sometimes hard to evaluate offensive line and, in particular, defensive line prospects that play in an offense that is the spread, like on the offensive side of the ball, or play against a spread offense on the defensive side of the ball, because it's just different, and it can be hard to grade those type of guys sometimes. In terms of an NFL comparison, to me, the best one that I came up with based off of watching his film over the past couple of seasons was Taylor Lewan of the Tennessee Titans. A couple of big motherfucking mammoth Big Ten left tackles. Just huge dudes that are big, long, and country strong. Guys that can be mauling, if not dominant, run blockers. Dominant, potentially, run blockers. Guys that can knock you on your ass. Guys that can push you 5-10 yards down the field. And they also play with mean streaks. I think Taylor Decker plays a little bit under control more consistently than Taylor Lewan did at times at Michigan. But both those guys that old school NFL people like. They like those guys that play with that mean streak, that will play through the whistle and sometimes after the whistle. Those type of guys that if a defensive player takes a cheap shot at your quarterback, a guy like Taylor Decker is going to be the first one in his face, wanting to go to blows. You want that type of guy with that type of mentality because they'll be the guys that'll go to war for your quarterback. They will be the type of guys that will protect your quarterback at all costs. It'll mean everything to them. He has improved his agility. He has improved his athleticism. He improved his footwork. He's much better as a blindside protector in 2015 than he was in 2014. But he still needs some work on it, and there are still people that are going to question whether or not he can stick there long-term at the NFL level. He's going to need to get better in terms of, again, his pad level, his leverage, his hand height, You know, again, on film, I think there are a lot of comparisons, not just because they're big white boys, mind you, but I think there are a lot of, in terms of their games, a lot of similarities at the college level as prospects for Taylor Lewan to Taylor Decker. But in terms of my overall thoughts on him, he's an experienced offensive tackle that played at a major level, comes with championship experience, played on both sides of the offensive line. He's got great size, great length, great strength. You know, a guy that's going to be a dominant run blocker. I look at Taylor Decker as a guy that has a pretty high floor. I hate sometimes talking about floors and ceilings, but sometimes you got to talk about floors and ceilings. You know, the NFL draft is like the home improvement business, for Christ's sakes. We're talking about ceilings and floors and ceilings. I think Taylor Decker might not quite have the ceiling of a Ronnie Stanley or a Laramie Tunsil, but his floor is much higher than, let's say, a Ronnie Stanley. I really think so, because I think his technique overall is much better, and he's better in more areas than a Ronnie Stanley. Where Stanley could get caught up in the athleticism and the potential of what could be because of that. You look at Taylor Decker, and to me, he's just a more complete all-around football player and offensive tackle. I think he would absolutely be a stud right tackle. I think he would be a dominant freaking left guard at the NFL level, although he might be a little tall to play a dominant left guard at the NFL level. But I think a lot of people are sleeping on him and his ability to stick at left tackle at the NFL level. I really do. I think there's a certain stigma that's been attached to him. I think there's a certain thought process that's been attached to him. And as a result, you know, people buy into that narrative. If you hear the lie enough, you start to believe the lie enough. Now, I'm not saying that Taylor Decker 100% for sure, lock, stock, and barrel, will be a great left tackle at the NFL level. But I think he could be at least a pretty good one and a really, really effective one for a long time. And I think people are assuming the truths of the past to be the truth and reality of the now, and that's not necessarily, again, the case. I think he's a better athlete than he's given credit for. He showed me that he was better at handling athletic edge rushers in 2015, and I think a guy that is worth potentially a top 10 pick, top 12, 15 pick in the 2016 NFL draft. For my money, he's probably the second, maybe the third best offensive tackle in this draft class. I don't know if there's anybody else other than Tunsil that would be better than him, because I haven't scouted all of them. But I know one thing: if I was taking an offensive tackle in the first round and I wanted to feel good and confident about that pick, I would rather have Taylor Decker than Ronnie Stanley. Call me crazy, I know. Well, that's just me. After watching him, because I had my own misconceptions, I had my own kind of thoughts and beliefs about Taylor Decker before I really started to analyze him. And I thought one thing, and I thought one thing was true. And now that I've watched him closer and paid more attention and seen the improvement in his game over the past 3 years, I think this guy could be a pretty good left tackle at the NFL level. I really do. And if all else fails and he doesn't stick at left tackle, he'll make a hell of a right tackle where you'll still feel good about having spent maybe a top 10 or top 15 pick on him, or he'll be in hell of a guard. So again, his floor is really, really good, even if his ceiling doesn't have the same level of vault as somebody like Ronnie Stanley.